Welcome to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews, the only show that's going to teach you
how to be somebody.
Where in your life did you learn that you're not good enough?
Take what you're most passionate about and what you're most fearful of, and what is the plan to overcome that fear, and what is the plan to enact that passion.
Welcome to Winners, Wallets, Worldviews. I've got on the other end here, we got Dave Byczek, who's a real estate expert and investor who's going to go through the CARES Act with us today and is also going to talk a little bit about what we can expect in the future of the real estate market. So Dave, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. Could you just give us a little bit of background on your kind of story, your upbringing, and then how that turned into real estate and being a real estate investor a little bit?
Well, I started right out of college in 1994. Always wanted to be an architect, but couldn't do the math. Didn't want to be in school that long. Went to college for a while, learned what they had to know, which to me wasn't much. And then in 1994, I bought a duplex on the north side of Milwaukee, and it since parlayed that into a $150 million portfolio. I own 2,000 apartment units and about 400,000 square feet of commercial space, either from big box to mixed use to light industrial and retail. I have a corporate office in Brookfield, Wisconsin, and 35 full-time employees. We self-manage everything I own. We manage in-house. We do everything from construction, new construction, to a lot of, we buy properties that need to be repositioned in the marketplace, like an apartment complex maybe built in the 70s. Do a complete rehab on it, reposition it in the marketplace from a D property to a B property.
Sure.
And we do everything that we can in-house, from rehabbing the units to our own maintenance, lawn cutting, things like that are all done in-house.
Sure. How did you accumulate so many properties? Was it just kind of one at a time, onesie twosie, and before you know?
Onesie twosie. Started out with the duplex and single families, parlayed those into near West Side Milwaukee apartment buildings, parlayed those into new construction, smaller properties around the state of Wisconsin, anywhere from Wausau, every small town, Red Granite, Oshkosh, Fond du Lac. Then started parlaying those into larger economies of scale. To me, are about 100. My sweet spot is between 100 and 200 unit complexes. So I started parlaying those into 100 unit new construction. So I'd sell 24 units and put those into a new construction 100 unit. And, never got overextended. When the market fell in 2009, 10, and 11, I was doing a lot of condo conversions at the time, but again, wasn't greedy, was not overextended, made money even in the bear markets, and bought a lot of failed projects 2010 through 2012 from either banks or investors that just needed to bail, and just have continued a steady growth. I mean, some years I buy 200 units, some years I might just end up with a 48 unit. It all depends. I don't overpay. I never get emotional about the real estate. It has to make financial sense. And if it doesn't, I pass on it or won't overpay for it, meaning someone else will buy it and beat my offer, and I won't get in the bidding war for it. Now, some properties I do, because I bought a 48 unit last year and paid $200,000 over the ask price immediately, initial offer, because it was so undervalued as it was. It was in the heart of Appleton. It was 1,000 square foot, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments that hadn't been updated or touched since the 70s when the building was built. But I bought it at $41,000 a unit. That building is just about done being rehabbed. Rents were $420 for 1 bedrooms, $520 for 2 bedrooms. They're now $600 for 1 bedrooms and $700 for 2 bedrooms. And I have a waiting list with 2/3 of the building completely rehabbed.
What is your, I guess this could be a loaded question, but I always like to ask just how you typically find a good deal, what you're looking for, and like what those values are that you're looking to hit before you decide you want to go in on one or not.
Well, they're difficult to find. This was on on the marketplace. It was listed with a national brokerage that I work with a lot, but it was it happened to be right down the street from 78 townhomes I own, and it was just the right building at the right time. And I mean, it was infested with roaches. It was infested with bed bugs. It had a swimming pool in the basement that hadn't been utilized in 30 years. It was vacant. It has underground parking, but the bones of the building were great. The units were large, and they just needed cosmetics. The building itself was in great shape, and it was priced right. There were many bidders on the building, but I wanted to make sure my bid stood out. And like I said, I went 200,000 over the ask price, and financed in with my purchase price the amount to rehab it. And that building should come online as being fully stabilized about August of this year. So it'll be about 15 months since I bought it before it's totally turned around and stabilized. But it'll be a great asset.
Yeah, that's a hell of a turnaround. What I guess before we get into all the details in the CARES Act, like clearly, you've got a ton of units. You've been in the game for a long time. You're certainly an expert in the real estate world, and I represent just a lay real estate investor trying to get into the game like you. First question before we get into the CARES Act and the implications of the market, what are your kind of just tips you would give to a beginning real estate investor like maybe myself that just has a couple dozen units or less, and then they want to grow into a nice portfolio someday?
Well, first of all, real estate is get wealthy, but it's get wealthy slow. It's not an overnight. You watch these flipping shows, which are just all ridiculous. They're not reality. You're building wealth. So what you're looking for is undervalued property in a great neighborhood that needs the elbow grease or needs the work. The second is put the work in. It's not going to come overnight. You're not going to hire contractors to do all the work. You're going to do a lot. I mean, when I started out, I did all the work. Now I've got a staff that does it, but you got to do it yourself. There's no easy way here. Mm-hmm. Third thing is there is no right or wrong way to do real estate except for over leveraging and going broke. There's so many different ways. You can flip houses. You can buy duplexes and, make your, I call it churning out your 300 a month on this one, save that money, buy the next one. And in 20 years, maybe you own 14 nice duplexes in a great neighborhood. That's one plan. One plan is own 3 duplexes, then sell those and buy a 24 unit. Keep that for a couple of years, turn that over, buy a 60 unit with the equity, and keep going from there. What's really happened in recent years is we get what's called the professional in the marketplace. It used to be guys like me. We grinded it out every day. We buy a duplex, a 4-family, whatever it was that made sense. We put the elbow grease in, we turned the rents. When we had equity in the property, we'd sell it, do a 1031 into a bigger property. But the biggest thing is accumulating more units, okay? But out of that, we had to be able to make enough money on cash flow to feed our families, rehab the property, and make enough profit to be able to put aside for reinvestment into another property. Now we have what's called the professional, which is the guy that owns a small manufacturing company, a printing company, who's making nice money. He's supporting his family and the lifestyle that they like with the income from his business. Plus he's throwing off another couple to $500,000 a year in extra profit. We all know the stock market's very volatile, up and down, up and down. He doesn't want to throw all his eggs in one basket. Hey, let's get into real estate. So they're coming in, they're grouping their money together and buying all the properties I normally go after. The 100 unit new construction, the 80 unit that needs a lot of elbow grease. And they're turning it over to a third-party management company, and they're happy with a 4% cash on cash return, a 6% cash on cash return, because they're still getting their pay down a mortgage. They're getting their depreciation, so they're not paying any taxes on the money they're making. And they're still getting 4, 6, 8% cash on cash return on their money, and they're getting appreciation, okay? Which is all good for a guy that's still making $300,000 a year at his own business. Makes the market tougher for guys like you and I, where we need to eat off of this, we need to fix the property up off this income, and we need to have money to reinvest. So the market dynamics have changed recently, ever since the crash. Once things started to come up, there was a whole new breed of person coming into the real estate market. So it's really gotten challenging. So the advice I would say is, it's almost like sales. The more it's a contact sport. The more contacts you make with people that own real estate, not necessarily for sale. If it's for sale and listed with a realtor, it's overpriced to begin with. There's not a deal there, and there's a million people on it. You have to generate your own leads and go get your own properties. And that calls knocking on a lot of doors, making a lot of phone calls. But I also see these investors that all, want to do these crazy things that they went to a class and spent $3,000 and got a mentor on, and they, want to do it with other people's money and no money down. That happens 1 out of 100 deals, maybe. Okay. Mm-hmm. You have to put your money into the deal. You have to have money to go into the deal. There is no, hey, I can get into this with no money down and do that. Do those deals happen? Yes, they do. Do they happen very often? Hardly ever. It's almost like winning the lotto, So if that's what someone's business plan is to get into real estate, scrap your business plan, keep your day job. It's not going to happen. Every time I put a property up for sale, we have in-house brokerage. So anytime I list a property for sale, I get tons of those calls. Well, will you hold paper? I'm like, why would I hold paper? I might as well keep the property. I'm not a bank. Those are my initial advice. The last one I have is when you do start making money, don't piss it away. Don't go out and buy a Ferrari. Don't go buy a new Lotus. Take that money, buy more property, funnel it back into your properties, and in 10 years, go buy Ferraris in colors, okay?
Yeah, right.
And everyone I give that advice to, they start making a little bit of money. 2 years later, I run into him. The guy's driving a Maserati, and a year after that, he's out of business. We call it big hat, no cattle. It's a Texas term, Looks like he's got all that in a bag of chips. Really, he doesn't have anything, There's a couple guys that came up in the early 2005 to 2010 before the crash. Younger guys than me, buying up everything in sight. No money down, overinflating the price, taking credits. They owned 3 times more in value of properties than I did in units. They were younger than me. And when the crash happened, they're all gone. I mean, we're talking $100 million portfolio built in 5 years with no equity, probably negative equity, and they're all gone. I made more money in the downturn than I make now because I bought up all those projects from the banks, turned them around, sold them off, made money.
How so? That's a good question, I think, to follow up with a little bit of this. Like, it sounds like, number one, you've positioned yourself to be a guy that has a lot of contacts when deals do come across. You're one of the first people might dig up or call. And I hear this a lot too with just, a lot of my friends that do wholesaling and flipping and things like that. They just try to get out there so people call them up if they do find some kind of off-market deal. What else have you found to be a really helpful success tip for finding those like off-market deals or finding something that might come across your desk like that, other than just kind of positioning yourself and making a lot of contacts?
It is strictly that. Get to know your brokers. I mean, very few deals will come from brokers. That makes sense. But the 48 unit in Appleton I got was through my broker, at Marcus and Millichap, who I buy a lot of properties through. Brokers work really well. There was a 240 unit for sale 18 months ago in Plover, Wisconsin. I had a good relationship with the broker. He had just listed it. I mean, he had just come from the meeting where the sellers had signed the listing agreement with them. As he was driving away, he called me up. This was a Friday afternoon. Said, Dave, I've got your next property. Shot me the numbers over the phone. That was on Friday at, say, 3 o'clock. On Monday, they had a full price, no contingency offer from me, and beat everyone to the punch, drove up there, handed them, walked through the properties, handed them the offer. That property is now worth, I've turned most of the, it didn't need anything. It was just owned by the original builder, hadn't raised rents in easily, it was easily 40% under market in rents, but he took very good care of the property. I had no capital improvements, nothing to do to the property. I've turned 160 units of 244 in the last 18 months The property is now, I just had it reappraised. The property is now worth $6 million more than what I paid for it. And my cash flow is $400,000 more than it was when I bought it 18 months ago.
Wow.
Okay? So you can get them for brokers, but again, he happened to get the listing. He called me up because he knew I had cash, I could close, and that this is a property that was made for me. I wouldn't be afraid of the low rents, even though they were asking a higher price for it. I didn't take a dime out of it for almost 14 months while I was, continuous. I mean, I always had 20 vacants for every month because we were just continuously turning units. And now I'm 100% occupied. The property's running great and cash flowing extremely well. So brokers, don't discount them, but very few deals are going to come from brokers. The other one is you're going to get deals from people that like you. So reach out to your bankers, the people you do business with. Something they start getting a troubled asset in, they might give you a call. Hey, Dave, this is coming back on the books, or contact this owner. He's having trouble. He's maybe looking to get out. Boom, go make the contact. People like doing business with people that like you. Okay, it's the same people that will loan you money, but actually that's people that love you. So that's mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. That's who loan you money. But there's never discount anyone you're talking to. You could be talking to a guy that has one duplex, and I might own 2,000 units. And some people think, well, why are you talking to this guy with a duplex? Who knows who he knows? All of a sudden his neighbor calls. Here's a prime example. I put an offer yesterday in on a 30 unit in West Dallas in Milwaukee. The property is not for sale. I mean, it's for sale, but it's not listed. I got the lead on this property. I also own Dollar General stores across the country. A broker that handles Dollar General stores, who another person I know knows, happened to be talking to this broker out of Atlanta who handles Dollar General, happened to mention that he had a guy he was working with that wanted to buy Dollar Generals, but he had a 30 unit in West Dallas, Wisconsin that he needed to sell to be able to 1031 into them. Well, through that conversation, I found out who the broker was. I gave the broker a call. He gave me the gentleman who owns the property. I called him on Monday. Yesterday at 9 a.m., I met with him, walked through the property, and by 5 o'clock yesterday, he had an offer. I had an offer for him on the property. You never know who you're talking to. Never, ever, ever, or who that person knows. You'll never know what you hear today in a conversation, where that might come around in a year. Hey, I got this piece of information a year ago. Now I'm talking to some other guy and he's talking about some other thing, but these two pieces of information all of a sudden came together. You're like, hey, I heard the other side of this story. It's over here. Here's an opportunity. You never know who you're talking to or what they're actually saying. Never discount anyone. People are a wealth of information.
That seems to be the running theme. The last couple of guests I've had on too, just talk about, the power of who, that kind of 6 degrees of separation from the right stakeholders that you need by just influencing a network. So it's good that you bring that up as one of your biggest strategies to finding those huge deals. It's just awesome. Let's shift gears a little bit. I think that's, we could talk about real estate all day. And I think this is some great insight to bring some novice investor like myself. But how does all this COVID-19 stuff going on in the news, and you hear, I've been watching just some of my investor friends, it seemed like they're being a little bit bullish in the marketplace. And I've seen them to be a little bit more bearish right now, especially in the real estate market, because we're looking at, companies are making huge cuts right now. Banks are all covered up in this PPP loan, which we'll talk about in a second. There's all this nonsense going on where renters aren't paying their mortgage holders aren't paying lenders. And to me, it just seems like it's very difficult to reconcile how people are being bullish at the moment. So what I'm kind of curious is just to get your thoughts on maybe the future of the real estate market. And we could talk about what people can utilize in the CARES Act, because as Kelly mentioned, you have you've read through it pretty detailed, and I'm sure that you've probably already gone through some applications yourself. Sure. So I guess we'll just talk market and what your predictions or thoughts are on what's been going on lately.
Well, here's where we're at. Anything that's vague, anything that you do not get paid on for April, we're budgeting in my company that we will not see revenue on that unit for 6 to 9 months. Okay. Evictions that we filed back in March, for a company our size, we do very little evictions. 3 to 5 a month is about it. So last month, the March evictions that we filed that had court dates in April, mid-April, have all been pushed back to June and July now. Okay. So right there's 4 months, March, April, May, and June. By the time you get that, and that's if nothing else changes. If it doesn't get pushed back anymore, we'll get our court date. They'll be out sometime by the end of June. By the time we turn the unit and get it ready to re-rent, it'll be mid-July. Okay. So you're looking at 5 months right there. So we're looking at, like I said, 6 to 9 months before any of these units come back online for producing revenue for us. So that's the first hurdle that as an investor you have to look at. So from a economic standpoint, the governor's order, the moratorium on evictions was probably one of the most short-sighted things I've ever seen. Now I understand, and I would almost agree with maybe if he did a moratorium on writs, actually giving the writ, but there's no reason why we can't go to court and do evictions. And there's no reason why they can't find that the person has not paid and should be evicted, but they should be staying those writs till May 28th as the moratorium is. Because here's what's going to happen. If it does not get extended on May 28th, you're going to see in every county hundreds to thousands. Milwaukee County used to have thousands of evictions. I mean, Milwaukee County does like 60-some thousand evictions a year as it is. Okay. You're going to see thousands, tens of thousands of evictions happen throughout the state of Wisconsin in every county, throughout the counties. Okay. It's going to back the court dates up. We're going to see court dates that get filed in the end of May. We're going to see court dates in August, September, October, because there's going to be so overwhelmed. Okay. So that's the first thing that was short-sighted when they did this, which is going to cause a lot of problem for investors. Because again, they're all saying this is going to be done in 90 days. It's sure the sickness, the stay at home might be over in 90 days, but the long-term ramifications for investors in real estate is going to go on for a year. It's going to be a very bad year to be a landlord. Okay.
You're just forecasting a loss for 6 to 9 months then, because
6 to 9 months for each unit that is not paid for April or March, for that matter, going back to March now, because of just the time to take them out. We're even looking at possibly, right now, all my asset managers are out knocking on doors for the hardcore cases that we have no contact from and who haven't set up payment plans. By the end of this week, we'll evaluate who our hardcore cases are that just won't play ball, and we'll actually offer them cash payments to move out. Because we're not having any problem renting vacant units. We have no issue across the state with that. Number two, I'd rather have a unit vacant and ready to rent than someone living in there for free for the next, 6 to 9 months. Okay. So that's my forecast. The market isn't going to just come back like bang, everyone's back to work. If we see this where we can start moving out of our homes and getting out of our homes by mid-May, that'll be good. But by the time people go back to work, get a paycheck, start paying their other bills and start making payments on rent, we're looking at really July before I really see a stable rent roll from my current tenant base. Because I think as things go forward, depending on what I'm hearing from unemployment, so a lot of the residents we're talking with still can't even get through to unemployment. A lot of the residents we're talking to that have been laid off, their unemployment is under pending, whatever that means. There's some investigation and it's pending. So they're not getting any money. See, that's the other part of the problem. The government has said, we've released all this money. Hey, here's these trillions of dollars for everybody. No one has seen a dime yet. There are no stimulus checks out there yet. Supposedly those will be released next week, supposedly. And that's only if you have given, you paid taxes in 2018 or received a refund that was a direct deposit. So they have that information from you. All the other people are going to end up having to get in touch with the IRS to say, hey, here I am, here's where I live, please send my stimulus check here. And who knows what that process is going to look like. I mean, that might be a 20-week process, knowing the government. So those monies aren't out there. Then we get into the other things available to people like myself, business owners, like the PPP program, okay? I just got guidance again. So we applied for ours on Friday. Our applications, everything were into our bank. We are still getting notification from our bank that they have no guidance. They have commitments now for them, all the ones they've received, but there is no guidance on to the instrument, the paperwork, or when this money is going to come and how they're going to get it to us. There's nothing. There's no plan in place. They're all waiting for it. they were waiting, the banks were waiting until after 5 o'clock on Friday. This process was supposed to be released by 12:01 Friday morning. Okay, you're supposed to be able to apply. Well, they changed the form from Thursday night to Friday morning that you're supposed to fill out, and the paperwork requirements. So that screwed up a lot of people. Then the banks had to put in their own process of, because they have to approve these and they actually have to go through and account for these. So each bank has its own process. They had to put that in order. Then they had to put it online for their customers like myself to be able to apply for it. Now they've processed a lot of these applications through the SBA. The SBA has supposedly committed to these, because that's the emails I'm getting back from one of my lenders, that yes, everything has been committed to by the SBA. Okay, that's great. The SBA said, yep, we commit to these loans. But how the banks are going to actually get the money, how that money is actually good, the paperwork that's going to be involved for myself as a borrower to sign, and how that money is actually going to move from the Fed to the local bank to my bank account has yet to even been come up with. None of these banks have any guidance on it at all yet, let alone any money. So how many weeks is that going to go? And what that's doing to my industry is, and every other industry. So as of April 1, we had to bring our employees back up to our original payroll from the first quarter, okay? So we're paying these people with money we don't have, because this money is supposed to be coming from this program. So who knows how long it's going to take for them to actually get it all together, get it to the bank, then the bank does their process, and the bank gets it to us. We're talking weeks yet.
Oh, yeah.
Where are all these small businesses supposed to be paying all of these employees with money they're waiting for? It's going to be a big problem.
Yeah, so the bureaucracy is going to delay everything at the best case scenario, right? So the best case scenario is we're going to see a delay in all of this stimulus, funding that's supposed to be coming through, some of the PPP loans, which it sounds like they're just trying to figure out, so the banks, if I called my banker yesterday, and number one, if you're self-employed, you don't even qualify until the 10th. And there's no guidance out for that. But then for people that are trying to, pay back payroll, he said the same thing you just said. He's like, yeah, we didn't get any guidance until Thursday night. And then on Friday morning, they updated the guidance.
They changed it all.
Right. And they don't even know how they're going to be getting paid back for those loans, for the forgivable loans. So banks are taking some risk in that too.
I mean, they will eventually get paid, but the risk is more in the paperwork. Like, what instrument am I going to have to sign? And what does that agreement look like with the lender that the SBA is backing to get these loans? And you got to remember, these loans under the PPP are forgivable. So what does that look like? What are those terms going to look like? Am I even going to want to sign the paperwork that they give me? Because what am I really signing for? None of us know what this looks like, and the banks don't. I mean, they freely admit we have no idea what we're supposed to be doing. And
on that PPP application, it really only said, is this going to wages, payroll? Is this going to mortgage interest? So you're not really getting a lot of any back on the principal, or you can't have the principal, and then, or rent. And then there's like other, like what is
there's utilities. Other could be insurance for your property, things like that. But again, there is no guidance as to what you put in the other, whether it will be allowed, if they'll even loan on it, and then if that part of the loan will be forgivable. The only guidance that's come out is at least 75% of the funds you receive have to be used for payroll for that to be forgiven. And 25% can be used for those ancillary items. That's the only thing that's been very clear. The rest is no one knows. Each bank has a different, we looked at a couple different banks that we deal with, because, several of our bankers called us to say, hey, do you want to do this program? The paperwork was just a little different for each one, what they required, what they wanted, what they, the actual application was the same, but then there were worksheets and formulas that the banks had to come up with on their own so that they could mine the paperwork from us, so that they could attest to, there's a questionnaire that the bank has to fill out about every one of these loans. So each one of them wanted a little bit different information so they could do their end of the paperwork. So it's really interesting that the government makes these broad announcements. Hey, there's $4 trillion out there. There should be no problem. But ask anyone if they've received any money, or if they even have an expectation of when they might get it, if at all. And there's no one out there that knows any of this.
Well, what do you think about the housing market? Because if Johnny and Sue want to go buy a house now, the banks are first of all going to be underwater with all these PPP loans, at least for the next couple of weeks. And then also they're probably not going to be cash flowing the same way if all these landlords have mortgage relief to where they can delay their payments. So the banks might be a much more conservative on who they decide to lend to. So you'd expect some kind of dip in the housing market too, right? What are your
I disagree there a little bit. There's a big difference between the commercial side and the retail side. Because,
Okay.
I mean, let's face it, everything ends up going to Fannie and Freddie anyway. So really all a bank is, or your mortgage lender is a facilitator of the mortgage, okay? So when I talk to like Kelly's parents' company, Schwab Realty, they're having a banner month. I mean, there are still listings coming on and people actually writing offers on homes because the people that are still employed, that have those jobs that are essential and still getting paid, their plans are moving forward. One of my bankers was in the middle of building his house. He put his house on the market 3 weeks ago, his existing house, and he was very worried about this. He's like, wait a minute, they're just about done with my new house. I don't think my old house is going to sell. It's sold. 10 days, gone. And they're closing. So I don't think what we're going to see more of are the people that are still working but worried about their job that were going to be buying a home, because the longer this lockdown goes, the slower the economy is going to go. And we're going to start ticking off some of the jobs that are working now. I mean, right now, I've got all my employees working. But if we don't get these PPP loans and we get a bigger dip in rents for May, we're going to have, we'll have no choice but to lay off people, and management people that are making $60,000, $70,000 a year that really aren't worried about losing their job right now. But if things continue or get worse, it's going to happen. And you're going to see that in every industry. So we're not out of the woods yet by any means, particularly because none of this stimulus money has made it anywhere. Because there's these other loans, these economic disaster injury loans. They're more like grants. They're up to $10,000.
Let's talk about that. So is that a grant and is that forgivable or is that?
Well, it's called a loan, but it does say in the guidelines that it does not need to be paid back. It doesn't give you any guidance on it. It's online. It's 2 pages. It's a very simple application to fill out. You put your bank routing numbers in there, so you're assuming the money is going to get dumped right into your account. But again, there's no guidance on it. It does not go through a bank. It goes directly to the SBA with an online application. And again, no word on them. I know a lot of people that have applied for them with small businesses. A lot of my tenants that have small.
I've applied for one of those as well, and I haven't heard anything either.
And no one's heard a word. They got their confirmation number that it was submitted. That's it. As to the formula of what they're going, how they're going to determine if you're getting 2,000 or 10,000 or 1,500. There's no guidance on any of that. There's no information on the internet about that whatsoever. And it does say in there, I mean, I know as much as you do exactly what the website says. Hey, there is no guidance. Here it is. It's free, supposedly. But the other question here is the big tax ramifications here. And this is the other guidance we're all waiting for. Okay. If these are forgivable loans, are these now going to be construed as income? And now is that going to be ordinary income? I mean, they always said, talk to your tax consultant. So I use a tax attorney down at a big firm in downtown Milwaukee. And, I call Greg up and Greg's like, Dave, I know as much as you do. We have no guidance. We have no idea what the IRS or the Fed is going to say about these forgivable loans. Are they income? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. So that's the other thing when you're taking out these loans, are they income? What is this going to do to your tax consequences a year from now? So that's another big question we have. But given the fact that rents are coming in so slow or not at all in some instances, you're taking the money because you just need it. You need it to pay the bills. I mean, we have an AMC theater in Indiana, big 16-screen multiplex. Got notice the second to last day in March, hey, we won't be paying rent. The rent is about $75K a month. The mortgage payment on the building without taxes or anything is $35,000 a month. Now there's rumors out there that AMC isn't going to make it out of this. I mean, they were teetering to begin with. So we look at that property and go, what are we going to do with that? How is this going to look? We're in touch with our bank down there in Indiana, where, that has the mortgage on it. What are we looking at? What's our consequences? Where are we going to go with this? Can we get another operator in there? But it's all up in the air. That you're going to see a lot more of that. The longer these businesses are closed, the more of this you're going to see. I mean, we had in Milwaukee here, we have Punch Bowl Social. They own 38 locations across the United States. They're gone, done, finished, never to re-enter the marketplace.
Read that.
How many of those are we going to see happen here? Not to mention how much of Main Street will be gone in 60 days. It just took the last 10 years since the crash to rebuild all of our main streets in America with all our small mom and pop businesses, which account for more than 50% of all the employment in the United States.
Yep.
And I really don't think, I'm going to get political here for a minute. This is where I think it's very short-sighted. We're talking about helping the cruise ship companies out. The cruise ship companies don't hire Americans. Their ships are all flagged in other foreign countries, but we're going to help out the cruise ship companies. We're going to help the airlines out. The airlines have been making millions and billions of dollars a year, but we're going to give them stimulus. As Donald Trump said, and I'm a Trump guy, said, hey, the big companies have nothing to worry about. We've got stimulus. We've got money going out to them. We're going to take care of that. That was in a speech he gave yesterday. Where's us? Where are the mom and pop businesses that employ more than 50% of the United States workers? Where's our help? Yeah, you rolled out these programs, but no one knows what to do with them and if we're ever going to see any money from them. So
Right.
my political spiel.
Yeah. Hey, we usually don't get too political, but I appreciate the honesty. And I think one of the things that, I've been looking at, and I think you and I might disagree on this a little bit, but let's say that the banks do end up in trouble. There may be a requirement for a second stimulus bill to bail out the banks like we saw in 2008 crisis. So it's like that money will have to come from somewhere as well if that's the scenario that happens, because I just don't see a scenario.
Well, that'll be all on the commercial side, though. The residential, we're not going to see a lot of this money. It's not going to bring down Citicorp because Citicorp doesn't hold mortgages, on the residential side. Yes, definitely. If this continues over 90 days where these businesses can't get open, you will see bank failures. 100%, it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
All the bankers I talk to on an almost daily basis now are busy working with all their retail customers, meaning people that own retail properties. I own a strip mall. None of my tenants can pay. I own a restaurant. I can't pay my loans. Those are where they're dealing with now. In the real estate investor market, this month, it was bad. We're down about 80,000, not including our commercial. Just on our residential side, there's about 80,000 not collected yet. So it's a huge number, but we can pay our mortgages. We can pay our bills. I might not make any money, but
Yeah.
we can pay the bills. This continues, next month, and there's more and more people that we have to do payment plans with and that can't pay their rent. It's going to go downhill real fast for us also. Yeah.
So we talk a lot about the disadvantages, some of the pessimistic side of this, like what could all happen. You survived 2008. In fact, you did very well during 2008. What are you doing right now? You mentioned a couple things as paying off some of your tenants who probably will be facing eviction to get out so you can refill those occupancies. What are some other strategies you can give some people invested in the real estate market right now so that they can stay alive and hopefully try to
control your cash flow? So the first thing we did is all of our utility bills and our mortgage payments, which is our mortgage payments alone, about $900,000 a month between P&I, tax escrows. We took all those off automatic payment. I did that right after the payments were made in March. Took them all off automatic payments. Okay. So now I control the cash flow, meaning I have to write a check to pay the mortgages on these properties now. So as we talk to our lenders about doing, just doing interest only, or maybe doing a forbearance, 90-day, no P&I, I'm in control. I have the money. It's not like they have my money and then I'm asking for it back. Okay. Second is utilities. Utility companies, We Energies, they're not going to shut off the power. All of those bills are sitting on my controller's desk yet to go out. The checks are cut, but we're not sending them out at this point. Contractors, Talking with your contractors and working with your contractors, saying, hey, we stopped all of our construction. We have one project, we're finishing up 5 units on it, and then we're shut down. We're done. A lot of contracts that we normally sign for True Green Chem Lawn, grass cutting, things like that, we've put on hold. So we haven't signed those contracts. Any bill that we can put on hold right now, we have. We're just not paying. Property escrows, we put those aside right now. Anything we can do to control our cash flow is what you want to do. And it sucks. We do intend to pay our bills eventually, but right now, We Energies is not going to shut off the power to a 240 unit apartment complex.
Sure.
And we're going to have to work something out with them later. Even though maybe this month I do have the cash to pay it, I don't know what I'm going to have next month. So we have to conserve our cash to keep our employees working, who provide the maintenance, repairs, and the safety and welfare of our residents, because that's our fiduciary responsibility, whether they're paying rent or not. And that's our first line is it's payroll, then it's interest on our mortgages. Everything else after that is ancillary. If we've got it, we'll pay it, or we'll pay part of it, and we'll work with all of our vendors. But that's what we're doing. You have to control your cash flow. The first,
go ahead. But
first thing, I was making calls already by the 3rd week in March to all of my lenders. What are you prepared for? What can you do? Immediately, 3 of my lenders said we can go 6 months interest only right away. Okay, let's get that rolling. So immediately, before we even knew what April rents were going to look like, we had things in process already. So being proactive in this market is key. Second is go and collect your rents. There is no moratorium on collecting your rent. I've got my asset managers to my maintenance people knocking on doors for people that we cannot contact through mail or through email and phone, to saying, what is the situation? Now, I understand if you're laid off, okay, the next question is, did you apply for unemployment? Okay, when did you apply? Okay, you should get your first check on this day. Okay, how much? Because they know as soon as they apply and get approved, they know how much their check is going to be. Okay, let's set up a payment plan for weekly payments. Now we've waived all late fees. We've stopped all of our rent increases. No rent increase letters going out anymore. But now it's, okay, how do we make this work for both of us? On some of our commercial tenants, we've deferred rent. Okay, your rent is $6,000. Can you afford $3,000? We'll take $3,000. We'll add it on to July and August rent. And we just keep moving forward from there. The important thing is to keep cash flow coming in at any cost. So be reasonable, but they have to be reasonable also. If they're still working, there's no reason why they can't pay you. Believe me, we've had residents have said, oh, well, we didn't think we had to pay rent. Well, you're mistaken. And by the way, you're still working. So what's your excuse? Pay your rent. I've personally been getting on these calls and saying, hey, where's the money? Where's the rent? What are we doing? So that's something very proactive they should be doing. Boots on the ground, knocking on doors, getting rent. I call it grinding it out. We are going to grind out as much of this $80,000 that is delinquent right now as we can over the next 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks until we hit May again, and then we'll keep grinding it out from there. But it is a boots on the ground, do it. There's one larger landlord in Oshkosh that he's down at his house in Florida, doesn't really care. He's not paying any of his bills. He's not really worried about collecting rent. I don't understand how that landlord's going to make it. We're out getting our money. And that's the key.
I think those are a couple of really awesome strategies. Just to qualify the first one a little bit, controlling your cash flows. Even from a personal finance standpoint, I was hearing Dave Ramsey on the radio talk about that same exact thing for people that have outstanding bills or have debt that they need to pay down. It's that you should control your cash flow, save up what you can first, pay the minimums you need to pay, but be able to make sure that you're in control, because you don't know what the outcome of this could be, or if you need to pay somebody worse than others, or if there's people willing to negotiate. So that's a great tip. Second tip you said was, most people will probably still pay if you ask them to pay, and you put enough pressure on them, they're going to pay what they feel like they need to pay, right?
Well, and again, we're trying to be reasonable, but if you're working, why can't you pay rent?
Yeah, why should your bills be different, right?
Yes, and the thing that we've asked them is, we ask them a whole series of questions. Okay, have you applied for unemployment? Okay, how much is it? Okay, you can afford to pay us this, and we'll take this a week. and continue on. And what we've stressed to all of our residents is there is no moratorium on paying rent. You owe the money. And by the time, as we tell them straight out, we will evict you after May 28th. We will get the money after May 28th, plus the post-judgment interest, all of our costs and attorney's fees, and they're going to have an eviction on their record forever. Well, 7 years, but I mean, a long enough time. And we will relentlessly chase them for the money. We will garnish wages. We'll even do non-earnings garnishment, and we're very blunt about it to the resident. And when you leave a message like that for a resident telling them what will happen if they continue to dodge you, I mean, yes, the bottom line is, can they get away with not paying you rent and live there for about 6 to 9 months free? Yes. The sad truth is yes. But at the end of the day, we will have a judgment. Now, getting a judgment and collecting on a judgment are two different things, but we're very good on collecting on judgments to the point where we actually go with the sheriff and repo all their possessions. We will repo their car if they have no lien on it. If they have a nice car and they only owe $1,000, we'll pay the $1,000 lien off on it and repo their car and take it and sell it at auction. We make sure that we are very blunt and very clear with our residents. This is the road that will go if you don't work with us.
Yep.
And we're willing to work with our residents. But it isn't hey, I don't have to pay you. No, it's we need a payment plan and we need the payments made every week. And we will work with them. And that's the message that has to be sent to the residents from the landlords. We will work with you. We will waive your late fees. We will come every week if we have to, every Thursday when you get your check, and pick up that $150 in cash and write you a receipt. But they have to know that. And that's why today, being the 8th of the month, I've got our asset managers out there in every part of the state knocking on the doors of people that have been dodging us, that won't return phone calls, won't return emails, aren't working with us. There's a handful of them. And we're knocking on the doors to find out what the issue is. Hey, what can we do to make this work for both of us? Not just me, not just them, for both of us. And that's the key.
And I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair to make sure that people are paying what's owed, especially if they're able to, just like you're saying. Totally reasonable. Well, this was awesome. Given some insights, some market predictions, helping other real estate investors maybe navigate their way through a lot of the nonsense going on. A lot of the things that we talked about, how we were going to talk about CARE Act today, but I think we covered a lot of the touch points, and a lot of these applications are pretty straightforward. So what I think we'll do is we'll put the links to the applications in the show notes of this podcast so people can grab that and they can apply and read through it. As you guys heard on the show, there's not a lot of guidance on some of this stuff. So it's kind of, working with your bankers and your financial advisors as well to try to figure out the best strategy.
Yeah, you want to work with, if you're going to, most banks that are federally insured, which is most banks and credit unions, are SBA lenders. But there are some banks that are more proactive as SBA lenders or not. But you definitely want to go through a bank that you bank with now that does SBA. And if you know a banker there, that's your contact. If you're throwing darts at a board, just calling a bank saying, I need to apply for this, it's going to be a rougher road. You want someone riding shotgun with you from your bank that knows you, has your business relationship, and will help get your documents processed, your application processed with the SBA, and then expedite, whenever we get the guidance, on the paperwork to get you the actual money so you can, carry on with your business.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, I think that's what people are looking for, is to figure out, what do I got to do? I got options. What are my options? That's the big one, I think, that came out of the CARES Act, other than being able to, to pull out of your retirement without penalty. That was another.
Yeah, there's that. And they've changed a lot of that. And, is that going to help? Typically if you have a 401k, you've got money in the bank, also. So, and again, we should be through this. I'm hoping, I think the realistic prediction is by the end of May is when we'll start to see things reopening. Beginning of June, right after Memorial Day weekend. The numbers everywhere we see around the country seem to be they're leveling off. And as long as, I don't think it's going to happen at the end of April. There's no way. If everyone comes out of their house at the end of April, I think we're going to be right back where we were again. Mid-May is when you'll start seeing restrictions starting to be lifted. And I think most quarantines in most areas will be out by June, first week in June is what I'm seeing. So really, start the economy in June, we're really starting to see results, I would say more like August, September, before we start seeing, people back to work. But the other side of this is, unfortunately, a lot of large corporations are using this as the excuse to shrink their workforce again. Where even when the business comes back, these people won't be rehired. I know that happened at Cisco, the big food service company. They eliminated a lot of people that were told they won't be coming back, regardless of what happens in the economy. Their jobs are permanently eliminated. So you're going to see the shedding of a lot of jobs in corporate America due to this. And it's the excuse for the corporate to be able to lay off a large number of people and not take the heat from the press. And these jobs won't be coming back. So that's another aspect that the news media hasn't touched on, that very few people have really talked about at all, that's really happening in corporate America. They are shedding a lot of jobs that will never come back. So are we going to get back to a 3% unemployment? No way, shape, or form. Now, on the flip side, this is good news for small companies like me who are dying for great employees. I mean, we can't find a good employee. And so there will be a better, more valuable workforce available even after this that will be looking for jobs. And if the small businesses are still around, we will have jobs for those people because we don't have enough workers as it is. And our companies will be looking for those people laid off from corporate America. And we might not have all the perks that the corporate America jobs, but we have good living wage jobs available in the small businesses as long as we can survive this. So a little positive to that.
Yeah. And I think that's good. I mean, you're giving people, I think, some good options that they can work with to get out of this, because we got to call a spade here when there's an issue. And I think that people that are just thinking this is a pause, it's going to freeze. I can't disagree more. There's going to be economic repercussions for this shutdown. And I think that we touched on what those are for the most part, but there's solutions too. And I think that's what you're working with your company. And I think you gave us some really awesome quick tips on what we can do at our level too, to just try and get through this a little bit. So, well, Dave, hey, I really appreciate you coming on. I know we're running out of time and I know you're a busy guy too, especially it's chaos, but is there anything else that, if sometimes I like to offer guests if they want to give any contact info or they want people to follow their company or anything that you're working on that you want people to know about, I'd like to give them a couple minutes to kind of talk about that too. So is there anything else you wanted to share with everybody?
No, I think we're good. I mean, we're just like everyone else, whether you have one duplex or 3,000 units, everyone's in the same boat. We can't survive without our residents. We should be working with our residents, but not being taken advantage by our residents.
Yeah.
There's a give and take here. It's a chain. The residents have a job. That's when they get their money. We get our money from our residents having a job. Our banks get the money from us because our residents have paid us. So it's a big food chain. We all need to work together. The banks, at this point, I am very pleasantly surprised. All the banks have been very good, willing to work and be reasonable. And most of the residents we have talked with have been very reasonable. We are able to work out a plan that works for both of us. We keep our cash flow coming in. They keep a roof a roof over their heads in good standing, where even if they're still behind, once they're back to work, we will work with them and make this catch up to this. And that's what it is. It's a group effort. We all need to work together, and there should be no one person taking advantage of anybody. It's all work together.
Awesome. Well, Dave, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.
Yeah, once again, this Winners Wallets Worldviews. You can go to aaronjarmstrong.com/podcast and you can listen to this episode. We'll also have any contact details about Dave's company as well in the show notes. So if you guys are interested in applying for the loan as well, the loans we discussed, PPP loan, EIL, some of those, you can also look in the show notes for that as well. So once again, everybody, be somebody.